The German came through the door first, shoved hard, his boots skidding on the wet platform tile. He was a big man, gray-faced, hands laced behind his neck. And across his chest, swinging with every stumble, was a chain. Not his chain, not German. American dog tags. Dozens of them. Looped and knotted together into one heavy braid, the little steel plates clicking against each other like a string of teeth. Behind him came 3 men in olive drab, soaked through, mud to the knee. The one in front had a sergeant's stripes and a face that had not slept in 2 days. His name was Eli Mercer. 31 years old, out of Memphis, Tennessee. Before the war, he drove a delivery truck and fixed the engine himself when it died. For the last 7 months, he had driven supply trucks for the Third Army, hauling fuel and shells up roads that did not have names yet because the Army had taken them that morning. That night, on a road outside a rail town in western Germany, Mercer and 2 of his drivers had run their truck into a German straggler walking the ditch. They had taken him at gunpoint, and when they searched him, they found the chain. Look at that chain again. Every plate on it was a dead American. Some soldier had been collecting them. Mercer marched the prisoner into the station, where the Army had set up a prisoner collection point, a bare room with a wooden table, a field telephone, and a second lieutenant named Carl Hadley running it. Tulsa, Oklahoma, 26. 3 months out of officer's school, and this room was the most authority he had ever held. Mercer lifted the chain over the German's head and laid it on the table. The steel plates spread out across the wood with a sound like spilling coins. "Found this on him, sir," Mercer said. "We took him on the Erda Road about an hour back. 3 of us." Hadley looked at the chain. He looked at the 3 black drivers standing in the doorway with their rifles still slung. Then he said, "You wait outside." Mercer did not move at first. He thought he had misheard. "Sir, this is our prisoner. We brought him in. The tags—" "I heard you, Sergeant." Hadley did not raise his voice. He never raised his voice. That was the thing about it. This is a processing point. Your transport. You're not authorized to process a capture. Wait outside. We'll handle the paperwork. The clean version of this story usually skips what happened next, so pause on that. A white patrol, 4 men from a reconnaissance outfit, had come into the station maybe 10 minutes after Mercer. They had not been on the Erda Road. They had not seen the German until he was already on the floor of that room with his hands behind his neck, but they were standing closer to the table, and they were the right color, and Hadley waved them over. He turned the capture report around on the table. He uncapped his pen, and on the line that asked which unit had taken the prisoner, he wrote their name. Not Mercer's. In Mercer's hand was the rail transit slip the prisoner had been carrying, a German movement document the man had used to ride the line west, the thing that proved where and when he had come through. Mercer had kept it as evidence. He stood against the wall holding it, watching another man's name go onto the report for the thing he had done. The enemy in this room was not wearing a German uniform. The enemy was wearing the same olive drab as the man it was trying to erase. If you had been one of the drivers in that doorway, told you could risk your life on a dark road but not put your name on the result, would you have stood quiet against that wall? Or would you have made a sound? Tell me in the comments. I want to read it. Not everyone in that station was looking at the table the way Hadley wanted them to. Standing near the field telephone was a man with a notebook and a correspondence patch on his sleeve. Daniel Rise. He wrote for the soldiers' paper, and he had been at the door when Mercer marched the German in. He had watched the whole thing. He had watched who carried the chain in, and he had watched whose name went on the line. Rise stepped up to the table. He was polite about it. "Lieutenant, I had 3 men bring that prisoner in off the Erda Road. The sergeant there. I'd hate to print it one way and have the record say another." Hadley capped his pen. "The record's the record, Mr. Rise. Transport doesn't process captures. You can print whatever the Army releases." And that was the moment Rise understood the page was not going to fix this. A story in next week's paper would not move the line on a form that was already signed tonight. The form would win. The form almost always won. For me, this is where the story stops being about one bad lieutenant and becomes about a habit. Hadley did not invent the rule that a black driver could carry the danger, but not the credit. He just enforced it, calmly, the way you enforce something you have never once had to question. So Rise did the only thing left. He folded his notebook, walked out to the row of jeeps in the station yard, and asked where 3rd Army Forward was. Patton came in a little under an hour later, and he came the way he always came. No warning, the jeep door already swinging, 4 white stars on the helmet catching the one bare bulb in the room. He did not say good evening. He stood in the doorway and looked at the whole room first. The table, the chain still spread across it, the German against the far wall, the 4 reconnaissance men, the lieutenant, and 3 black drivers still standing outside the door because no one had told them they could come in. His eyes went to the chain last and stayed there. "Whose tags are those?" Patton said. "Recovered off the prisoner, sir," Hadley said, straightening. "We're processing him now." "That's not what I asked." Patton walked to the table. He picked up the chain and let the weight of it hang from his fist, the steel plates turning slowly. "I asked whose. Every one of these is one of mine." He set it down. "Now, who put his hands on this man first?" The room did not answer fast enough. "Lieutenant." Patton's voice did not rise. It got quieter, which was worse. "Who took the prisoner? On the road, tonight." Hadley's mouth opened on the word procedure. He got as far as, "Sir, transport isn't authorized to—" "I didn't ask what they're authorized to do. I asked what they did." Patton turned his head toward the doorway where Mercer stood. "Sergeant, where'd you take him?" "Erda Road, sir. About an hour before I brought him in. 3 of us. We searched him and found the tags." Patton looked back at the report on the table, turned it with 2 fingers, and read the unit line. Then he read it again. "Read that twice," he said, "to no one and to everyone." He looked at Hadley. "This says a recon patrol took a prisoner they were standing next to. It does not say the men who walked him 8 miles in the dark with a German chain of dead Americans on his chest." He picked up Hadley's own pen and held it out across the table. "You're going to fix it. Right now. In front of me. The capture goes to the men who made it, by name, and the recovery of those tags goes in the same line." Hadley took the pen. His hand was not steady. He drew the line through the recon unit's name himself, while the 4 men who had been about to take the credit stood and watched, and he wrote in its place, "Sergeant Eli Mercer and detail, Quartermaster Truck Company. The men who had taken the prisoner and recovered the tags on the Erda Road." Patton watched every word go down. When it was done, he had the field clerk enter it into the night log as well, so it existed in 2 places and could not quietly disappear before morning. A public record entry. Ink the paper could not take back. He did not give a speech. He looked at Mercer once, nodded the way you nod at a man who has done his job, and said, "Those tags go to Graves registration with your detail's name on the recovery. Somebody's mother gets to know who brought her boy home." Then he turned on his heel and was gone. And the room stayed silent long enough for Hadley to understand that the quietest thing that had happened to him that night was also the end of something. Here is what came after. Sergeant Eli Mercer finished the war hauling for the Third Army across Germany and went home to Memphis, where he ran a garage for 31 years and almost never talked about the chain. He died in 1988. His details' name stayed on that recovery record. Second Lieutenant Carl Hadley was transferred out of the processing point within the week. He left the Army in 1946 and sold insurance in Tulsa. He told the story, when he told it at all, with his own name on the capture. And Patton, by the documented pattern of how he ran his Third Army, a man who cared more about who could fight than about anything else, would have logged it and moved on to the next town before dawn. No medal came out of that night. The record was simply made true. That is the part that stays with me. The recognition this country owed men like Mercer mostly came late. Some of it 50 years late, some of it never. But on one night, in one rail station, the paper was forced to say what had actually happened. Dignity restored. The system, still exactly what it was the next morning. If your father, grandfather, or uncle drove for the Red Ball Express or any of the transport outfits that kept the Third Army moving, leave their unit in the comments. The specific stories matter more than the official archives, because for a long time, the official archives were the problem.